Hi, welcome to this episode of Herald Cafe. Today we've got a postdoc researcher, Dr. Roger Lee de Jesus, and he's doing his research in Leibniz University, Germany, Hannover, and he's doing some interesting work in a sense that he's looking into the territorialization of Portuguese Empire in Asia. Tell us, Doctor, about your inspiration to look into this side of the study, or Goa.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
It's very important, of course, to have a conversation also with the local population, since this is the first approach to my postdoc research about this process that you were talking about, the territorialization of the Portuguese Empire here, on this case in Goa. And so it's part of a European research project called Iberland, which try to understand land tenure on a global perspective. And so actually the project is led by Professor Manuel Bastias Saavedra. And so the main point is to look it on a global perspective through several case studies. And so we are studying through the case of Goa, which is my case. And I have other colleagues studying the case of Mexico, Brazil, Cape Verde, Spain, and the Philippines.
Wait, is it only Portuguese colonization, or like
the
across?
Iberian Empire?
Okay.
So you have the Spanish case and the Portuguese case. And so, well, because usually they're the ones that are forgot by the historiography, because you have always the big case, like of course the English case, but it's not so common to look to this case through the Iberian empires. And so that's the main point of looking how land was, well, how land tenure evolved on these territories. And so that's how I arrived, of course, on these case studies. I've already studied before the Portuguese Empire in Asia, the Estado de India. My PhD was about a governor of the Portuguese Estado de India, which was
he was stationed here?
Yeah. Dom João de Castro in the 16th century. And so, as I've said, it's a first approach on the case of Goa, which is a very unique case. And so, as the project has a comparative approach, I'm also working with my colleague, Alina Rodriguez, who is studying the Mexican case, because it's, we can say, at the same time as it's happening here in Goa. And so, also the main objective is to understand what is happening at the same time, that we can understand that is, being done on the same way or not. So what are the things that we can look at the same time?
And Roger, like when I was reading your paper, and when we were speaking in Fundasa Orient, there were like distinct cultural markers, not a cultural marker, but distinct time markers that you have put up, about 4 time markers. What are those about?
Well, my talk at the Fundação Orient was organized around 4 events, which was easier to tell this story, of course, of the Portuguese territorialization here. And so the first one was a very interesting case. It was one of the first letters by the king, the Portuguese king at the time, Manuel. It's a letter from 1518, which is regarding the land here in Goa, and the Portuguese settlers who married locally, the so-called casados. And so it's very interesting because it's a very broad law that he had to change immediately. And so it shows us how actually the king needed to be informed, always be informed about everything, because he needed information. We're talking about a ruler, a monarch who is, not here.
1,000 miles away.
Yeah, completely. So he's in Europe. You're talking about a voyage that is like 6-month voyage. So today you live on the
Today also you need 6 hours at least to go.
At least. But today you live, you send a message and the person is already reading it. But back 500 years ago, you need months and months. So he needs to be always informed about everything. And this first case was about that. The second case that I wanted to talk about was the Fural de Goa, which was written in 1526. It's a very important document. Actually, I think it's one of the most important documents of the history of Goa for that time. And so it's a charter. We can translate as a charter of rights trying to give how do I say it? You know, trying to codify laws,
right,
the local laws of the villages, and so that's a very important document. And then you can understand it by seeing that it was a so important document that it was expanded then from the island of Goa to the other regions. That is the Vegas
people have emulated that kind of policies
for the other territories,
right,
after being you know, part of the Goa territory. That is Bardez at north and Salsette on the south. And so it was used until practically the 19th century as a really important normative document. And then the third episode is a very interesting, it's an episode of 1541, when the Portuguese authorities actually are asking for the local communities, the Gancars, for you know, authorization to get some revenues to for the
church, for the monarch,
for the maintenance of the local church here on the island. But they're asking, you know, the Gancars. So it raised a really interesting question of who owned the land, you know, because on that case, the Portuguese royal officials here in Goa are recognizing that who owned the lands are the village. And so, and this is connected with the last story that I was telling, which is already in the 17th century, in 1648, which is a case which opposed, you know, the king through his royal attorney here in Goa to the College of Rachol in Salsette. And so, and it's also a question of jurisdiction. So about an island in front of the college, which actually is being studied by this specific case is being studied by a colleague of mine, a Brazilian colleague called Patricia Faria. And it's a very interesting case where you see that from the middle of the 16th century, where there is this idea that the Portuguese officials recognize that the land belongs to the village, and then across the 16th century they change their idea of who owned the land, and in the middle of the 17th century there's a whole idea that no, actually, you know, the land belongs to the king. And so, which is what we usually think when we're thinking about colonialism. But this first phase of colonialism, we can say that it's a very negotiated process. So because it cannot work, you know, by brute force, we could say. Well, of course, it always worked through violence.
There were instances.
There is always violence involved. It's always an oppressive system. But on that case, it's also a negotiated process. And that's very interesting to analyze it on through that lens.
And Roger, about the distance in that area, no? You said like it takes around 6 months to go there. And what kind of informations does King used to get from here? Like only texts or maps? What are the what are the kind of information that he used to seek or he used to get?
Well, a little bit of everything, you know, because, well, the India run, the Carrera da India, so the connection between Lisbon and Goa is a 6-month journey, as I've told you, but it's very organized. So, you know, the ships are sailing from Lisbon around, I would say, February, March, and so 6 months, and they arrived here around August, September, and then they need to wait until the end of the year because of the monsoon to get back, and so they can get back to Lisbon around December, January. So 6 months, and so you have like it's like 1 year and a half between sending a message and receiving any answer. And so, as you can imagine, you know, 1 year and a half to get an information back, it's a lot of time. But that was the only way, of course. And so what that means is that, of course, the king need to be informed always about everything, and it could be, you know, a textual report, and so, you know, the descriptions of the fortress, of you know, people, of lands, of everything, or it could be, as you said, you know, illustrations, which is very interesting. And there we have some records on that case. Well, we have letters of the king, you know, asking for, I want to see pictures, you know, of the fortress. I want to see the space. And then you have some records of that. You have, for instance, a very known book, which is the Book of the Fortress, the Livro das Fortalezas, which was done in the 17th century.
What is that about?
Well, it's a collection of drawings of the fortress of the Portuguese Empire in Asia. So
all over Asia.
Yeah, from Mozambique the Persian or Arabian Gulf, until here in India. You have beautiful drawings by Antonio Bucaro of Salcete, Bardez. You have all the fortress on the southern coast in Kerala, until Macau, Malacca. And so, you know, it's very interesting records to see well, how they see, of course, that information at the time, and how relevant, because actually that book is not only have the drawings, but also the description of the land and of the fortress and of everything,
dimensions, population,
and everything that they needed to know about it. And so, but that's on the official part, because then you have also, you know, private information, because we have also some sources that, you know, noble Portuguese or other that were very curious, and so they take also information.
They're writing travelogues.
Travelogues. For well, there's a very famous travelogue of the governor João de Castro, which he have 3 routers. So travelogues, one from Lisbon to Goa, the second from Goa to Diu, and the third one is from the Red Sea. And so they are all very interesting, with very important information on the nautical side, about how, of course, how to navigate, but also information about the land, about the people, and everything. And you have, for instance, also Garcia da Horta, who lived here in Goa and in the actual Mumbai, and who published his very famous book in 1563, the Colóquios, which is a description of all the
flora and fauna.
Flora and fauna.
We've got a garden here.
That's it, Garcia da Horta.
Yes.
And so actually, that's also one example. Or still, there are many examples, or the famous, also from the middle of the 16th century, the Codex Casanatense, which is a very interesting book that you can search online. It's you can find it online, even on Wikipedia if you want. The image are online. It's an anonymous book, but you have drawings of all the peoples and the lands, you know, from Africa to China. So it's a very broad kind of information, but not only the king wanted to be informed, of course, but you have a whole private sector, you could say, you know, in a very proper way, that is also interested on this case, on this kind of information.
Like the cultural anthropology or the contemporary history of that area.
There's many studies about this layer of the Iberian empires.
So, Dr. Roger, I want to come back to that Forel of Goa. Down, like in 2026, it will be 500th anniversary of Forel of Goa. And where is the document now, that charter? Is it in? Well,
actually, there are several copies. There's not an original of the from 1526, unfortunately. We have several copies. There's 2 or 3 copies here on the archives of Goa, which are the best copies. And then you have copies which may be a draft in Lisbon. And so the Foral have been published many times. The first time it was fully published with some relevance was by Philip Neri Xavier in the middle of the 19th century, in this very famous book, Bosquejo das Comunidades. And so, well, as I've said previously, you know, it's a remarkable document. And it's so important to the history of Goa that, you know, it can be a bridge, you know, because, you know, there's this colonial past, which is never easy, of course, to talk about, to analyze it, but there's a common past. And so it's very important to see that history needed to, well, we need to look to history in a way to understand our time, our present time, because, of course, the most important thing is that, you know, you can't look to the past, you know, thinking that it's black and white, you know, because there are many grays, and so there are many layers.
I could understand, Roger, when you say that there is a negotiated approach as well as violence, you know, like you cannot say that black and white, it's always gray, you know.
Like that's always gray, you know, which is not at all, you know, saying that on this case that I'm talking on the Portuguese approach, it was a different approach. No, it's just saying that, you know, as it happens on every colonial empires, it's always a very complex process. That's so, you know, actually violence on one side and a negotiated process, as I call it, on the other side, it's all the same, the same thing.
So another question following up is that what are the difference between colonial rule in Goa versus colonial rule in South America, supposedly, but the same Portuguese. Why it is different?
Well, it's different mostly because they're different territories.
Right.
And so actually, you know, one very important idea to understand the Portuguese Empire, well, not only the Portuguese, but we're talking about it now, is the idea of diversity. Diversity in the way of governing. And so as each territory is different, so you need a different approach in each case. So even on the Portuguese Empire in Asia, which you're talking about, well,
supposedly Kerala versus Goa, or Macau versus Goa.
That's it, or Mozambique versus Hormuz in the Persian Gulf. So all approaches are a little bit different, so they always need to be adapted. That's why also, you know, the Portuguese captains, the officials, had some authority, you know, some freedom, because it was very
necessary to adjust to the local situation.
So you cannot have, you know, a very formal way of doing things and just apply it everywhere. No, you need to adapt.
So there's no uniformity.
No, not at all.
And but the Forel of Goa, that document, people keep it as a normative document, as they look up as a master document, try to follow that.
Well, that's on a different way, you know, because the Portuguese Empire, which is a maritime empire, but on certain case, on certain regions, this territorialization, so, you know, putting foot on land.
Or getting taxes.
Of course, because they want taxes, they want money. That's the most common thing. This territorialization, in the case of Asia, happened in Mozambique, in Goa, in Sri Lanka, actual Sri Lanka at the time, Ceylon, and on the Província do Norte, which was the name of the territory between Shaul, nowadays Korlai, Mumbai, until Daman and Diu. And so you have these 4 regions in Asia, but all of them are different approaches. Even if you compare the case of Goa with the Província do Norte, in the region of Mumbai, before being British, it's a different approach. So it's very different. You have, of course, a very similar approach from the base, but then locally it's different, and so it's diverse.
Must be so problematic, because as it is, you don't get information on time. You take 1 hour, 1 year to get the information, and then to govern.
Well, imagine 1 year and a half to go. If you're talking about Macau, it's like 2 years or more than 2 years.
Totally.
So so sending information to Macau and getting back, it's really huge amount of time.
And that is why the lieutenants will get a certain autonomy to, like, certain powers to make things happen. Till they get the king's orders.
The case of Macau is very interesting, because that's, you know, it's so far from everything that they need to have really autonomy to rule, because, you know, they couldn't wait to know most of the things. So, for instance, when the Portuguese got their autonomy from the Spanish king in 1640, well, the revolution. The coup is on the 1st of December of 1640.
And the king got to know 2 years later?
That's it.
Right.
You know, the coup is in Lisbon, and then Goa gets the information on the summer of 41, but Macau is just like practically in 42. So it's a lot of time to manage. So and it's very interesting to see how today we live, you know, on an era of
instant
messages, instant messaging and everything. And so so you can imagine how it was difficult to manage an empire on that scale.
Totally, man. I agree. Like in the age of instant messaging, also, like a war in Russia and Ukraine still happening. True. I think we are getting to the end of this show with the time, but lastly, I would like to ask you about that in 2026, when a 500th anniversary is happening. Are there any functions that you know of to create a good relationship between Portugal and Goa, or what are your views on it? That looking forward. of
well,
this?
you know, it's as I've said, it's the perfect occasion, you know, to do some collaborative work,
Yes.
which has already been done. Of course,
Right.
it's not something new, but
Mhm.
as it's so important for both parts, you know, the Fural could be, you know, studied more in depth, because even there have been some new studies about the Fural,
Okay.
and so each study shows different layers of the
True,
document.
true.
So, you know, there's always different approach and something new that you can look at it, and that you can learn with it, that you can understand it on another way.
Okay.
So you need to always update what you know about historical knowledge, because
Yes.
it's always being updated. So in 2026, for the anniversary, it would be a perfect time, you know, to
Introspect and
yeah, that's it, you know, to look into the past, to
Yeah.
understand actually,
Yes,
of course,
yeah.
our present.
great. Thanks talking to. It's nice talking to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yes. See you again. All the best.
Thank you.
Yes, audience, it was great talking to Roger. Dr. Roger, he's doing an interesting study. I believe his website will have more information.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What? Can you please tell us the website?
Yeah, the website of our project, iberland.eu.
Okay.
You can search on Google, so
Okay.
it's very easy to
Yes,
find.
if anybody is interested, you can go to that website to learn more about it. And thank you for your time, and I will see you again next week. Thank you.